All right, hello everyone, and welcome to today's form building webinar. My name is Nick, and I'll be taking us through the builder today. Today we'll be going over formatting selection options, more specifically setting up something like a medical history or a review of systems type section, giving the patient multiple options to select or answers that they'll need to complete. But let's go ahead and jump right into that. We'll go down to our packets and forms page, and today we'll be working off of our FormDr training packet. So we'll just go ahead and move that up to the top just so that we can get to that easily if we need to come back to this page. But let's go ahead and click the three dots on the right side of that and click Edit Forms. And just as a reminder, as we go along, if you do have any questions, please hold on to those and keep them at the ready. I will be opening up that chat a little bit later in the webinar. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or go back over any information if necessary. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start building out this section. And then we'll go through formatting it and the best practices to use when doing so. All right, so we had all I've done here is just added a scratch tab, which is basically going to be a blank area for us to build out a custom form. It does come with this patient name widget. That's simply because that patient name widget is going to be needed at least once in each packet, because the information filled out in the first and last name fields of this widget are going to be what name that submission is stored under on your send and receive page and in your records. It's also very important to only use the patient name widget to collect the name of the patient or the person whose information you're intending to store that under. All other names can just be taken with that general text field. But okay, when it comes to selection option questions, you'll have a few options here, such as the single select, multi-select, drop-down, and multi-check boxes. These will all allow the patient to select more than one answer. However, in some cases, such as the single select and the drop-down, they will only be able to select one answer. With the multi-select and multiple checkboxes, they will be able to select as many as they need. So obviously the multi-select options and the multi-check boxes are going to be what we're looking at primarily here for the purposes of today's topic. You can build out a section with several yes or no questions. All you would need to do in that situation would just be to place a single select option question down. And then what we could do is use the column widget found over here at the bottom section in the formatting tools. We can click to add that at the bottom of the page, or we can also click and drag from the sidebar to a specific position on the page to go ahead and add that. But once we have our column widget down, we'll just need to click and drag the elements that we would like to be inside of it in there. So all we'll need to do there is just click and drag that into our column. And then from here, we could go ahead and duplicate this out. That way we don't have to add multiple of these, but maybe we need 10 of these questions. We can go ahead and duplicate this 9 times. Close that up, and we have our single select option section here. If we wanted to update the amount of elements per row, because we have this one hanging down by itself, maybe we want to bring those all together, you can always just hover over the column. Now you'll notice when we hover over each element, each one has that little orange pencil icon that will populate for it. If we want to update that specific question with whatever we may need, we can do so. You can also update the answer selections as well if you need to for any reason. But we can hover over the column itself. It will also have its own orange pencil icon. So we can click on that. We'll open that column for editing, and we can update the amount of elements that are allowed per row. So it will always default to 3 wide. Just keep that in mind. Maybe you want it to be 2 wide if those answers are kind of long, or the questions are kind of long, just to give it a little bit more room to breathe. But in this case of this, such as a review of systems or a medical history section, typically it's going to be 1 or 2 words for some symptom that you're asking if they've had. And in those cases, you'll be able to stretch that out a little bit and put more elements per row. So this would be the single select option way, which is completely viable to use. However, if you are using an entire element for each 1-word answer, or one word question, I should say, for each one of those symptoms, that can get a little bit big and start to take up a little bit of room. And it's very important to think about how you're going to be using the forms when you're formatting these out, such as if you are going to be printing them out a lot, please keep that in mind that all conditional information will print out as well. So if we have one of these sections in here, which I'll just go ahead and add, and then we can demonstrate this here in just a few moments, but I'll just go ahead and add a few questions. And you can also place a column inside that conditional information as well, or in that conditional section as well. So maybe we have, maybe we have 6 questions tied to this one answer. If it's just a describe or an explain type thing, then that's completely fine. That's not going to matter too much, especially if all of the questions have that conditional information within it. However, let's go ahead and save this, and I can show you what I'm talking about here. But if we go back to our Packets and Forms page, we click the 3 dots, and this time we're going to go to Settings. We can create a blank PDF of our forms. But again, all conditional information is going to be printed out on that PDF version. So as you can see in our single select options section down here, we have our 6 text fields for our additional questions that are tied to that one single select option question. So it will push that next row down. So this can affect the formatting a little bit, especially if you do have a lot of information in one of those conditional questions. In those cases, I typically would just recommend going in to edit that form, next to build to go to the form. And then if a question is going to have basically another section of information underneath a specific answer selection, I always just like to bring that one out and let it live on its own, just to give that area the most room to breathe. Because if we go to the style page here, we'll have a live version of or a live preview of this form anyway, so we can go through and make our selections. But once we select our yes option for the single select, we get those 6 text fields. You'll also notice that it's only being given 1/5 of the area, because that single select option, that parent question, is only given 1/5 of that row. So I always like to bring those out and let them breathe a little bit more, just because you'll have a full area for those additional questions to be populated. And it's going to look a lot better on that printout as well, because those questions won't just be jammed into that list right there. Now, as you'll probably have noticed, when I pulled that question out, it adjusted the formatting of our section down here. We still have this set to 5 wide, and we have 5 elements in our top row here, and those are still being brought out correctly. Just make them look uniform here. But on our second row, we have only 4 elements, and it is it's formatting as if it was set to 4 wide. So the column widget will always default to the elements per row if it can. However, if there are fewer elements than what it is set to, it will format accordingly to those numbers. So it's going 4 wide here, and that's exactly how it would look if we had set it to 4. So to get around this, if we want these questions to also be formatted in that 5 wide format, we can take up the last position of this column by using a group tool or a page break. Typically, I'll recommend the group tool for this because it's one less step that you'll have to do to get the desired outcome. However, you can also use a page break for this, and I'll go through and demonstrate how to do it with each one of these. But let's go ahead and add our group tool. Now, it's going to look a lot like the column, but when we open that up, it's going to give us a few different options. So that column format won't be available to us with the group, and the group is not going to affect the way that your patients interact with the form. It's simply a formatting tool for you to use on or while you're in the builder to move multiple or large groups of information. So we can actually take this group and we can drag the column itself with all of that information into it. We can also bring all of our other elements in here, and then we could move all of this as a single unit using that group tool. So then we can move all of that around, or we could even use the move function if we had multiple tabs to move this as a group. So this can make your life a lot easier if you are updating your forms and moving things around. Again, your patients won't get much use out of the group tool because when you put it on a form, they will not see it. So it's really just a formatting tool. However, I find one of its most useful attributes to be the fact that it is an element as well. So it will take up a slot in that column, but since the patient won't be able to interact with it at all, it just fills that slot as if there was another element there. So it will just show up as a blank space, but it has forced those other 4 elements to adhere to that 5-width format. So that's a really nice kind of a shortcut tip to help make the forms look a lot nicer, just to complete that formatting and keep everything uniform. So I do recommend using that group for this reason, and it will just make everything look really nice and tidy, especially on those printed versions of the form, just to keep everything lined up so that it's very clear to the patient which ones or where that next question is falling. All right, we'll go ahead and delete that group out, and I'll demonstrate the page break style for that same function. So we can go ahead and click to add our page break. And now we'll have a page break, which can be used as a separator in the forms or kind of a spacer. Just note that it is an actual page break. So if we were to have this above our section and we were to open it up, we'll notice that it has 2 toggles enabled by default. One being show line, which if we disabled, then that line will disappear, and then you can just use it as a spacer. The second being use as page break. Again, this will be on by default, and this will make this act as a literal page break. So if we were to print this form out, everything would be on one page until we got to our page break, and then it would force this set of information onto the next page in that printout. So keep that in mind if you are using the page breaks and you don't want them to force that information to the next page on a printed version, just to uncheck that use as page break, and then you can use it as a spacer or a line or whatever you may need. But this can also be used as a space filler in those columns. I always just recommend to open that up and uncheck the show line and use as page break toggles, because then it will act just like that group widget and just be a blank space on the form. I always recommend the group widget for this function, for this purpose rather, just because it's one less step and you don't have to remember to go in and untoggle those two toggles. You'll just need to simply drop that group widget in and you're good to go. And we'll take up that space. All right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, sections like this, depending on how many questions you have, can get rather big. So in situations like that, I recommend just switching away from the yes/no style of questioning and moving into a single widget style. So to demonstrate that, we'll use our multiple checkboxes and our multi-select options. We'll start with the multi-select options just because it's very similar to the single select option. You won't have many options in terms of how this is going to be formatted, but we can go ahead and add, let's just say 20 questions here. And I'm just going to click the add option button. And then I'm just going to, since that was my last action, click my space bar and it will repeat that action. This may be just a setting on my computer. I'm honestly not 100% sure, but if you are adding multiple, you can always try that out and it might save you some time. But we can see here that our multi-select options, will try to keep that as tight as possible. Again, you won't be able to format the way that these answers are displayed, and it will adjust the size of the answer to however long your answer is. So that box will get as long as it needs to be to accommodate whatever you're including as that answer selection. That being said, this will try to keep the shortest or smallest amount of space taken up depending on how long your answers are, or how long or how many questions you have. So this will be the best option if you are looking to save space, as it will just be dynamically updated with however long those answers are. But this will allow for the patient to select as many options as they need, and you can also include conditional information in here as well. All we need to do that is just hover over that element, click the orange pencil icon, and then anywhere in the open space beneath an answer selection, we can go ahead and add our conditional information. Let's go ahead and add a few here and see what that looks like on our live preview. So our first 5 options now have some text field information. Maybe it's a describe or an explain, or maybe these are, this is a type of cancer or diabetes or something like that you may need to get that information as well. Just one note about the multiple checkboxes and the multi-select options. Let's go ahead and add some of these to our single select options as well, because I would like to show you how they will be a little bit different. Oop. Mouse is going rogue. All right. Okay. We'll just add a new one and delete that one. Okay. And so I've added it to the first 3. I'm also going to add it to this one down here in the middle, because these 2 styles will present that conditional information differently. So depending on how much conditional information your section is going to include, it may make more sense to build that out as a yes/no style section for this purpose, or for this reason right here. So as this is a single widget with multiple answer selections, each one of those answer selections having conditional information, we can select that option and be presented with that additional information. When we select the second one, it will present the second one beneath the first one, so on and so forth. So if all 20 of these questions have conditional information, it will stack on top of each other like that. And again, if you are printing these forms out on in a PDF for in-office use, then all 20 of those text fields would be presented. So in those situations, I do recommend setting that up in the single select options style instead, because that conditional information will be presented directly beneath the widget that it's part of. And as these are all individual widgets, those conditional information will be presented directly beneath the question. So you can also see that if all of these questions have that extra question or that additional conditional information to be included, then when you print this out, it's going to also look very, very much more aesthetically pleasing than the multi-select option style would. However, if you're not collecting conditional information, maybe you just need to know if they had that symptom or not, then this is a really great option for that, because it will save you the most amount of space. I do like the multiple checkboxes as well for the same type of section. And again, we'll just click that add option and use our space bar for that last action, ease. All right. But the multiple checkboxes will give you a little bit extra in terms of formatting. So when we open this one up, we have our 20 questions here. We can click and toggle on the show as columns option. That will give us access to the column functionality. So then we can select how that column is going to be displayed, and we can make that look a whole lot nicer. Again, this one will also save a lot of space. It will display that conditional information exactly the same as the multi-select options, because again, this is only a single widget with multiple answer selections, so all of that conditional information will be presented beneath. But I really like the multiple checkboxes for that formatting functionality, because you can get really creative, and if you're only having a few words or maybe one word selections, things like that, you could push that all the way out to 9 and really try to save that space if you're concerned with saving pages on printed or exported submissions. Oh, I know we're running a little low on time. I'm going to go ahead and open up that chat just in case we do have any questions. So that is open. Please feel free to get those questions in if you do have them. I'll be more than happy to try to answer those. In the meantime, we'll talk about the single checkbox as well. So if you are using the yes or no style selection, you can also use the single checkbox. It will also have conditional functionality. You will just need to toggle that on for that checkbox, but then we can add whatever conditional information we need into this section below. You can also default the checkbox as well. So if for any reason you want something to be pre-selected, you can do that using the single checkbox. But I often will recommend using the single checkbox in a style like we have just above it, just because it can also look nicer, and it's going to be typically personal preference on how you want that information to be displayed. And, also too, I guess if your patients are going to prefer one way or another, then I would obviously recommend going in that direction, because the overall idea, I would say, would be to make this as simple as possible for your patients to fill out, and not really confusing or anything like that, because otherwise they're just going to fill out only the required questions and just kind of burn through the form as quickly as they can just to get it over with, and then you may be left with some information that you need to collect from them at the time of their visit. But again, if we wanted to set up something like this with our single checkboxes, we're just going to place our column and drag our checkbox in. And we don't have to have them all be the same. Maybe they're drop downs or something like that. You can have multiple different styles in here as well. The column is just going to be that container for those elements. So if you think about it in a layered system, if we have our first layer being our form area, and then each other layer on top of that, just a series of containers. So we have 2 containers here with different sets of information in them, and the rest of our widgets are out just on that first layer of our form in general. Oh, question? When I try to download a PDF, get a busy server error message. I would first, and I would recommend reaching out to our support staff if you haven't already. I'm sure their first recommendation will be this one as well, but I would first recommend trying another browser or clearing your browser history. It is possible that there's a cached file in there preventing everything from loading correctly. But other than that, I would recommend reaching out to our support team, just because they'll be able to go in and look at that packet specifically, just to ensure that there's nothing, no disconnections between what is in your account and on the database. And if you do reach out to the support team, I would include the name of that packet as well, just to save some time in that regard, because I'm sure they'll ask you which one that one is. But if you do need to reach out to the support team, you can always just, we'll click through to save, just go to My Account, Support, and in the section at the bottom, you'll be able to select reason why you're reaching out. If you do have any documentation that can be uploaded here, that's all very helpful for our team as well. And then the details, of course, this will be the message that our team receives in that support ticket. So obviously, the more detailed to the issue, the more quickly our team will be able to assess that and take care of it for you. And then once you click that contact support button, you'll receive a ticket number, and our team will reach out to you shortly after that to help get that issue resolved. This may not be applicable to the issue that you're facing right now, but you can also check out our guide pages as well by using the search guide function here. So we'll take you to our product guide, and just in terms of using the account or building forms or setting up integrations, whatever the case may be, we have tons of articles in here, especially when it comes to building forms. We have articles on all of our widgets, and how to autofill questions, autofill date of birth, things like that. We'll have some step-by-step instructions and some imagery for you as well, just to help you get that set up. So please feel free to check out our product guide. It's incredibly useful in terms of what information is in there, and our team worked very hard on it. and it being part of working with support, we do find it very useful in terms of helping just with building forms primarily and using the account. But you can also use it for any integrations that you might set up. And that's not just integrations with other systems, but also bulk exporting can be set up this way. That can all be found in the send and receive, but I do find that to be very helpful for our clients in terms of exporting information. For instance, if you do prefer to export in a PDF format, you can set that up to export out into Google Drive, and this can be automated, and can also pull out those previous submissions that have been or previous forms that have been submitted as well, so that just kind of takes it out of your hands and can really make your life a whole lot easier. But we'll go back. And then also too, if you go to the FormDr update section down here at the bottom right on the product guide, this will take you to our webinar schedule as well as our recent releases. For instance, our most recent product or update that we just released included 3 new features, such as our document signing, the synced forms, and as well as the custom plans. So please feel free to check these out for more information. But more specifically for our webinars, we have just posted our June webinar schedule. Please check this out on the FormDr updates section. It will have our schedule of what we'll be going over in each webinar for each day, and our form building webinars will be different topics for each one of those, and we'll try to build off of the ones that we can. But the next one that we'll be going over will be more of a beginner version of what we went over today, just general formatting of selections, and then we'll move on from there. But our onboarding schedule won't change too much. If you are interested in signing up for any of these, you can just click on the date that you want to sign up for. It will take you directly to the sign up page for that day. And if there's anything that you're interested in, but you won't be able to be in attendance for it for that day, that's quite all right. We will be posting those videos after the fact as well. For instance, if we go to March, we'll have some posted here. You'll be able to click that. It will take you right to our YouTube channel with that video, and we'll have some timestamps on that for you as well, just letting you know what we're going over in each one of those. So if there is something that you've missed or that you won't be able to attend, just keep an eye out for that. We will be posting that as soon as we can. But just to give you an idea, we have split these up in terms of topics or what we're going over for each month. So if you do want to go back and watch any of our previously recorded webinars, in February, we went over adding and creating new forms in the account. And then March was going over each of the widgets in the builder. So we went through every single widget, what it can do, and how we recommend using it. And then April and May were all about updating and editing existing forms in the account. So please feel free to go back through and watch any of those older ones, especially if you're just getting started building forms. The March series will be incredibly helpful for you just in terms of how to use those widgets. Ooh. All right, well, I do apologize. We are all out of time today, so that will conclude our form building webinar. But if you have any staff or coworkers that are interested in learning this information, or if you would like for them to learn this information, please feel free to send them the link to join or send them our way. These are all free, and we do encourage everyone to join as often as they like until they're comfortable with the product and beyond. But we really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day, great afternoon, and hope to see you again very soon.